Welcome to But Why, real talk on messy minds and messier systems, the podcast where two psychologists overanalyze everything so you don't have to. We're here to unpack the weird, the worrying, and the wildly unjust, with just enough existential dread to keep it interesting. I'm Dr. Kristin.
And I'm Dr. Laura, and let's dive into the mess.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, shall we, before we do that, should we update on things?
I was just going to say how cool it was having Jess on last week. How much
Yes.
fun that was.
That
I mean,
was
for us,
fun.
it was a month ago, but because I just got to edit the podcast that she was on, it reminded me of how much fun we had.
Yeah.
And how much you were alarmed by so much of the stuff going on in the US.
So alarmed. So it's scary. And I think I am. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sheltered from a lot of what goes on. Like, I suppose, being in the UK, but then also not getting a lot of that stuff on my social media feed.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, yeah, it's eye-opening.
Yeah, if you guys haven't watched or listened to that episode yet, I want to remind you guys that we are doing series now. So that was part
Yes.
1 of 3, and this is part 2. So if you haven't caught that, number 1, watch it because it's informative for this. But number 2, just watch it because it was a really fun, cool episode with a really cool guest.
Yes, and go follow Jess as well.
Yes.
She posts such cool stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm learning so much. I love it.
She does a great job with the sociological nuance, which is just really cool. So yeah, definitely go give Jess a follow, and we really appreciate her coming on. So I just wanted to say that first because re-editing and rewatching the episode just made me, I was laughing the whole time, even though a lot of the stuff was just really serious. But I was just laughing at, firstly, your facial expression.
Yeah,
are gold. And then also just like, yeah, the amount of information people have nowadays about what's going on and just being able to like go back and forth on it. And then it was making me annoyed because we do have all this information about what's going on, but we don't know what to do about it. So just like going in this circle of like
a roller coaster of emotions.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it'll be fun to continue that conversation today though. So, well, should we tell people what we're doing?
Yeah, let's do it.
I guess then for part 2, so for this episode, we're going to be talking about wellness, language, and discipline disguised as empowerment. So as a recap, I suppose, for part 1, so if you've gone away, listen and come back again, hello again. But so recap for part 1 with Jess. So we spoke about how women get pulled into the pipeline, which is often through fear, uncertainty, and like aesthetics of safety. So today, what we're going to be focusing on, we're going to zoom in a bit more to how that pipeline starts to tighten its grip. And not necessarily through like violence or hate, but through this softness and this discipline and empowerment.
It reminds me a lot of what we talk about a lot, ambivalent sexism theory, where there's that hostile element and then there's that benevolent element. And I won't rehash it because we do talk about it in the last episode, but you'll be able to see the reflections of, okay, well, if you're fitting within that role of the benevolent woman, you're protected by society, and also only some people can truly benefit and are more protected by that because of their identity, whether that's their skin color, whether that's their, neurotype, whether that's, their ethnicity, anything like that. So that's where we're going today. The fun part for me is doing these things where this isn't on Laura's algorithm in any way, shape, or form.
Like, literally no. Like, oh yeah, because of course, yeah, at the end of the last episode, we were like, go away and see if you can find anything on your algorithm. And I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. And I was like, actually slightly afraid because I was like, if I look for this stuff, am I then going to get more of this stuff? And actually, I don't want that stuff anyways. But I don't really think I ended up finding much at all. Should I say, I found one thing which I thought might be loosely linked.
Okay.
But I'm not totally sure. Okay, so it's basically this
I'll overlay it on.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so I'm gonna watch it.
Me going.
For our audio listeners, not so useful.
Yeah, well, for audio listeners, I will describe it. It is of natural tones. It's a image of a woman lying down in some moss and being covered by said moss. And it says, "No more girl bossing. I want to girl rest, girl sleep, girl lay down on the forest floor and be absorbed by nature. I want to girl moss." And I thought, that's nice. I was like, I definitely want to do that.
I would like to be moss.
But then I was like, wait, is it trying to make me not girl boss anymore? And I started thinking about the episode. And yeah, I wanted to know what you thought.
Well, what conclusion did you come to?
That it's fine, I think.
So it's really interesting that you sent this, because I have like a version of this that's problematic, right?
Ooh.
So that's what I brought to evidence, kind of like what we're talking about today, to give you an example.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think this is problematic, because it's literally not giving you like, this is the only way to be. It's not actually reinforcing anything that is like an unnatural benevolent woman kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now,
it doesn't like tick all like those boxes that we laid out last episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not what was it? I guess the morality kind of side of things, or like the universal truth side of things. It's not like that stuff.
And there's no binary. There's no like, you should be doing this. It's just somebody saying, I want to do this. I want to rest.
I want to rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I do have like a issue with things like girl boss instead of just like boss. And like, what is girl rest? Is just rest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As like, but because we live in this system where we do have these binaries and everything like that, I just think like, if you were just saying like, it basically it's no more hustle culture. I just want to rest and sleep and be absorbed into nature. That's really what it's saying. So
that's
the
how
only
I feel
thing,
most days, actually.
yeah, same. Yeah. And that's like a very human thing. But the thing is, so that itself is harmless. But some things like that, if you interact with that too much, you'll start getting probably maybe further down, whether that's like the divine femininity or soft femininity, like where you're supposed to be. Because divine femininity and like some of the even more witchy vibes that aren't proper witchy are very grounded in like, it's just like the woman thing is to be in nature. Women are synced with nature. Well, no, we're humans. All of us are technically synced with nature. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It could get to that point.
Yeah.
But this is more just like,
girl's tired.
Yeah, let me sleep.
Let me become boss. That's all I want.
Exactly. What was your more? Did you say you had a more problematic version you wanted to share?
I'll show it when later. I start describing some stuff.
Okay, cool. Go for it.
But first, I feel like it's the responsible thing to talk about something that's happened recently, and you've probably not been as ingrained in it as I have.
I've surprisingly seen a lot, but I bet nothing
more than you've wanted to, I'm sure.
Maybe. But I also think it is like interesting. Like, I'm curious about it.
And what we're talking about right now is the like assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I just feel like we need to briefly talk about the situation, because it's getting very convoluted out there. Because the normal thing to do in moments like this, whether you agree with the person or not, is allow a period of like, okay, let's stay back from who the person was and let people mourn and kind of almost have that immediate emotional reaction that people are allowed to have as long as they're not harming people. But it became immediately politicized. And so people like me have had to come in with facts and figures and receipts. And so people with a massive following online and news reporters and things like that have had to come in to provide context. And so this whole spiral has really shown us how quickly like language can be used as a weapon, which is kind of what we're talking about today, because they're using the situation, the broader system and government, to control the narrative rather than engage with truth in any nuanced way, or to unite people. Because we used to be proud of, as a country in the US, when something that can be perceived as a tragedy happens, people come closer together, right? And that is just gone.
This is completely torn
It's
people,
gone.
and I think what I find interesting from like what I've seen on my social media is even like, you know, people sharing things like, you know, don't follow me or unfollow me if like you are celebrating like the death of Charlie Kirk and things like this, and people being outspoken about it who maybe weren't previously,
Hmm.
or people who I wouldn't even like, just people you don't like, I wouldn't think about in a political sense, right? Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like your
Yeah.
content, like Jess's content, for example, I think, oh yeah, they're going to post political stuff. Even people I would not link to that at all started speaking out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It bothers me to see the people that are suddenly speaking out when they've not bothered to speak out about any kind of gun violence in any way with
Mm.
any of the stuff that's been. There's a shooting that same day in my home state in Colorado,
Okay.
and children died, and like that got completely swallowed by the Charlie Kirk situation.
Yeah.
There were political assassinations earlier this summer that you might not even be aware of because our president couldn't even be bothered to call the governor about it, like literally. And one of the reasons for this is Charlie Kirk kind of built a brand off of strategic victimhood. He liked to switch accountability into victimhood and persecution. So for example, like if somebody was trying to hold him accountable for a racist remark, he would then say, well, that's not free speech, that I'm a victim
Yeah.
of you oppressing my free speech. And the reaction to this, and especially for any perceived critique of his ideology, was super immediate, super performative, and super vicious. And the weird thing I noticed is I critiqued him a lot while he was alive. I know who he is, right? And people who follow me know who he is. On purpose, when this all happened, my focus on my social media switched to the systemic response. Now, I've also felt like I needed to be responsible and say, I'm not like we do nuance here, right? We can say that, he was an authoritarian figure, but also murder's wrong. And this systemic response to it through our government is terrifying, right? We can see what they're doing. And the people,
What are we seeing them do?
oh my God, they're basically inciting violence against the left in heavy quotes because I don't think they even know what the left is. The vice president on air, well, firstly, he took over his podcast, Charlie Kirk's podcast, for the day or whatever. He literally told people to dox, so call the employers or share the information of people who were celebrating in heavy quotes his death. And their version of celebrating is literally half the time just quoting Charlie Kirk. And
This
so,
is something I was wondering as well, because
yeah,
I don't think I've seen anyone celebrating in
no.
like cheering and being like, yes, come on. I haven't seen that at all. I've seen people take, like, say, that more nuanced view,
Hmm.
but not, and the truthful, arguably, view,
Yeah,
but I would not label
yeah,
any of that celebration.
yeah. I mean, the internet is a big place. There's always going to be people who might not have the best takes or, whatever it is, who are celebrating someone's death. It's just people, just like if you get a internet with millions of people on it, that's going to happen. But
Hmm.
it's very easy to see that that's not the general reaction of the left in heavy quotes. And a big difference is the leaders on the left versus the right. So the people with the biggest followings. The left has been responsible, saying, I condemn violence. This is not good, blah, blah, blah. And the right has said, this is the radical left doing violence and like sending out lie after lie after lie. And
Okay.
so I don't want to spend any more time talking about him or the situation. I just thought we should mention it because it's a relevant thing on the talk on the podcast and in our culture right now. And I just wanted to basically say like we're not going to talk about him, but we're going to talk about like what the situation reveals about where we are right now in this moment, about the systems that we're living in regards to this episode, how language is deployed to consolidate power and silence our own dissent and reframe compliance as a virtue, which you'll see echoed throughout, this whole episode, because that's what the US government is trying to do right now. And if you want more nuanced take on it, just have a look at my Instagram, because that's not the point of this podcast. We're trying to dig into some fun topics, unless you want to talk about it more. But
Is this fun? Is this series fun?
it's It's legitimately terrified of the fallout of this because it's giving, 1930s Germany when, they used martyrs to clamp down on rights, blame certain groups and things like that. So be careful out there, guys. Be careful about what media you're consuming, which is why we're doing these episodes right now. And try to approach stuff with nuance. Because today's episode is about how that kind of manipulations happen super quietly and softly. And, Pinterest boards and Instagram captions and TikTok sounds and like these online coaching programs and specifically
TikTok
how
sounds. What are TikTok sounds?
Oh, Laura.
What is it?
There's always like a trending sound on TikTok. And so you'll hear one when I share like the video
Okay,
thingy
cool.
that I have.
Thanks.
But there's ones that are like very soft, and then there's ones that they're it's people are incentivized to use trending sounds because they'll get more views, they could maybe make money or go viral, stuff like that.
Okay.
And these are actually, I just learned this because I got invited to do it, incentivized if you have a certain amount of followers on TikTok for you to plug these sounds. So they want you to pay you to put it on your profile. So it's all being driven by TikTok and the algorithm.
And that's problematic.
Well, it can be. Like if you look back at our episode with Jess and Oliver and Pete, even we were talking about the problematic role of capitalism in these kind of like right-wing pipelines, which is a whole other tangent. But I think we're going to talk about now how women are being pulled into these systems of control, but they really often feel like empowerment and care and healing. And because the language always feels super gentle, it's kind of the opposite of the alt-right pipeline for men. But either way, the message is super clear, right? Okay, so it's stay in line, don't question the rules, and perform your role. So I think a key way to look at this is thinking about the society we live in, which is white supremacy and patriarchy, which are very hierarchical, and there's a protection in certain places within that hierarchy. And so if you're not from that preferred group, you're going to naturally be socialized to fight for the top place you can get in that patriarchy, in that white supremacy, in that hierarchy. So that's what this is all about. And a lot of this is done by language because that's what our brains are evolved for, right? It's language. That's how we communicate. That's how we think. Language is one of the most powerful tools that authoritarianism has, especially when it mimics things like therapy or feminism or empowerment because it feels subtle. I'm not going to go super psychosocial theory based for this whole thing, but the things I want you to keep in mind as well are 3 different theories that you'll see trickling throughout. So what I hark on about a lot, neoliberalism. And so this tends to reframe systemic harm as personal failure, right? So then they're going to sell you solutions through self-discipline. And then you'll notice it doesn't do shit. Then you have a Foucault's theory of disciplinary power, where surveillance from that system becomes internalized. And we enforce our own oppression or self-discipline and things like that. And then we have epistemic closure, which is language that relieves uncertainty by offering moral clarity, or we call that moralizing. We talked about that last episode. So you'll look out for the things like high value, divine feminine, things like that. And it just kind of shortcuts your critical thinking. So that hopefully will help you contextualize everything we're talking about. But first, before we dig into everything, I want to share to Laura this post. I had it up, but 'tis gone in my saved. And this one is titled How to Enter Your Feminine Soft Girl Era.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. Fabulous. So the general vibe of a lot of this content that we're talking about, the kind of the stuff targeted towards women, is pastel wellness, soft-spoken coaches, quiet homemaking, like the clean girl aesthetic. And it works because it's calm, it's soothing, there's a lot of order, and especially to women who feel overwhelmed.
How to enter your soft girl era. Okay. Okay, so slow down. I kind of like it until, well, not like it, but I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of nice until it gets to how they're speaking. So the third or fourth image, so speak softer but mean it. Feminine energy isn't loud, it's magnetic.
Yeah.
Don't overshare or over-explain. Let your softness be powerful. Like, yeah. But the stuff before that, I don't mind it because it's like you say, that's more the self-care stuff. So like, slow down, don't stop rushing, like live in the pause. Like, I don't mind that stuff.
But doesn't that reflect a certain amount of privilege?
100%. Like who has
rushing.
time to do that? I think I tried to stop rushing for like 2 days once, and it really just didn't work.
Yeah.
So.
I think this is what we were talking about last week is how it gets you, because some of the stuff that, like, there's stuff in here that really resonates with people who are living in a
giving
like,
main character. Oh my god.
Right. But saying like, slow down and try feeling again. So, do journaling.
Yeah.
Eat your meals without scrolling. That's all great stuff, right?
Sure.
But
yeah.
then they say this is not about looking like somebody else. It's about, enhancing you. Fine.
But then they tell you how you should look.
Yeah, exactly. Then the next line is, well, no heavy makeup. You need glowy, clean skin, brushed brows, soft blush, lip balm, hair that smells good, feels soft, and looks done but effortless. Like,
oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, but that is not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, really? Jesus.
And then, and then it's don't overshare, over-explain. So that's like almost demonizing women in leadership positions without doing that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, that bit gets me. Yeah.
And the bit about asking questions, great. Listen more is great, but it's almost saying like, don't speak.
Yeah.
Be quiet. So you can just kind of see how this content has a lot of harmless, but a lot of harmful stuff in there.
Yeah,
like walk slowly.
Don't have like you say, don't have opinion. Just listen to other people.
Yeah.
Like, I know when it's like let your softness be powerful. That almost like, I don't know. It's like
benevolent sexism.
If you look this way and dress in this way, then you're just basically just going to be a nice object in a conversation. You're not actually going to be adding anything to it.
100%. 100%. Like, create boundaries. Fantastic. Say no without guilt. Can be good. That needs more nuance. Your soft girl era will attract chaos if you don't protect it. The hell does that mean?
The picture at the end looks like really AI as well. I don't know if it actually is.
I think she's just really done her hair up.
Oh my goodness.
And she has you're in your pajamas, pancakes.
But you've got your hair like totally done up.
Just that alone. Can you see the stove in the background?
Yeah.
Is like tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh, really?
It's meant to be like this, I'm doing it all in this like rustic soft girl way, but every single thing that's being shown there is expensive. So you get the general idea, right?
Yeah.
And so we've kind of gone over our thoughts on it, right? Let's do some personal reflections because we both had our own like journeys. Have you ever gotten pulled into something that kind of started with wellness but ended up almost like in this performative thing?
Probably. Maybe not in like a really bad way, but I'm often someone who I'll do something or start a certain routine, and then because I've built these rules for myself, I find those rules really hard to break. So for example, I used to like go to like yoga like twice a week and Pilates like twice a week. And it got to a point where I was like, this is way too much, because it was like in the evening or like in the morning. I was like, I just want a day where I'm like not doing anything. And then I was also trying to like play tennis and like spin and things like that. But for some reason, I found it really hard to let go of like the yoga part, because I was like, well, this is like good for my my mental health and things like that. And found it hard to like break that rule in a sense. I did eventually, and now I hardly go. I might go occasionally, but sometimes I will get stuck in like a random rule I've just created for myself.
And I feel like that links, a lot of the stuff we're talking about in this episode links to our over-optimization episode.
Yes.
Where we talk about, it's that neoliberalism thing, right? So systemic harm becomes a personal responsibility. It's your fault for, stuff like that. So you're like, okay, yoga should help my mental health, but then that's a thing that you have to do and pay for. Rest also helps your mental health,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I think
totally.
there's such linked concepts, and that's why it's so easy to slip into these pipelines. But thankfully, coming from a point of view where you were able to acknowledge that and go, nah,
Yeah.
was there any guilt from coming away from it?
Yeah, sometimes I feel guilt. Sometimes I still think, oh, like, do have the instructors thought where is she, or why doesn't she come anymore?
Mm,
But then when I do go, it's not like they're not like, oh, you haven't been here in ages. They're just
yeah.
like welcoming and
Mm,
like just the same as always. So that
yeah.
kind of helped me to feel less like guilty about it. Like, but it's kind of like I feel like the example I've given it, that's almost I don't know, more of like a basic, say, self-care wellness decision you're making, or trying to find a balance. Like I feel I'm always trying
Mm-hmm.
to find a balance with things, but it's more that ongoing like self-reflection of like what's working for me right
Mm-hmm.
now and what do I need to change, or maybe that's not right for this moment in time, but I'll come back to it another time. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that is useful to kind of step into and reflect on, whereas I feel like what we're talking about here is it's more, I don't know, like ominous. It's more like feels like,
Insidious.
yeah, like you're being like pushed down like a certain path,
Mm-hmm.
and it almost starts in a similar way, perhaps. So it is something that, yeah, that sounds good from the outset. That is something that I want to do, but then it starts to go downhill, and it's harder and harder to get out of.
I think,
Whereas mine is
sorry,
just
go.
like, my example is just like yoga, and then I was tired, and then I didn't do it anymore. But you
Yeah,
know what
but
I mean?
that's like such a healthy example of like how to do stuff. Do you know what I mean? And I
Sure.
think it's a really important thing to share, like that is possible. You know what I mean? And also saying like, yeah, I wasn't actually enjoying it, but I wanted to enjoy it,
Mm,
And I think
totally.
one thing, like we were saying, benevolent sexism underlies a lot of this. In our paper that we're submitting this month, we kind of recognize that benevolent sexism, and I say this in the last episode, is the more insidious type of sexism because you don't recognize that it's happening. And women are more likely to accept it in a really hostile environment. So, like, if they step out of the zone and they're going to get really hostile behavior. So, like nowadays with the red pill movement, women are much more likely to accept benevolent sexism and either not recognize it or go like, well, this is all right, this is fine, and rationalize the reasoning behind that. I 100%, as a psychologist who does a lot within social frameworks, see why the current world we're in with the predicted backlash against women that we've talked about will make so many women tempted to go down these benevolent sexist routes when they're feeling stressed or powerless or just in need of some structure and
Yeah.
not sure where, because the algorithm does what
Mhm.
it does.
Yeah. Have you got any examples of when you've been
Yeah.
like pulled down that?
Yeah, a little bit, because for me like it was definitely like a self-care need because I was feeling burnt out. And I think it was around the time when I was having my autistic burnout, but I didn't know what it was. And like was starting to really struggle. I've always been into makeup and skincare. I've always thought it was really fun. I find it really interesting. And I also want to age like a vampire. And that probably won't go away because we live in a patriarchal society.
Yeah.
um, but it kind of took a turn when I started to experience this burnout and symptomology of depression. All of a sudden, I was buying all these like gadgets, like
Mhm.
laser things and like microcurrent things, and looking at all this
Mm,
content about how to be like, I think there was a lot more softer kind of like content that I was going towards because, oh, I would just love to be able to just chill and rest. And I all of a sudden realized, holy shit, I've probably spent like $500 in the
mm,
span of 6 months on beauty stuff that I don't even really need and I probably won't use. And like, I'm like, what the hell am I doing?
yeah.
And I kind of just snapped out of it, luckily. And I didn't attribute it to anything really to do with the algorithm or anything like that. But now that I reflect on it, I can see that I was relying on just some sense of like normalcy or role fitting, I suppose. That I don't know. It's like a really weird thing to look back on. Basically, I think what I think was happening is my my personal autism mask was slipping and I was becoming less and less palatable to people. And then I tried to do it through soft girl ways. So flowy tops, all this kind of stuff. And then something happened, probably the rise of fascism, along with some really good fantasy books and stuff like that. I realized what was going on. And then you
Mm.
recognize if what you're thinking is healing requires you to be palatable, then it's not healing. It's just performance. It's
Yeah.
being performative. And so
Mm.
I think a lot of this stuff can appear feminist. So, but they're just reproducing the hierarchy that we live in and women being palatable.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think like social media does throw so much at us that we should buy. I get all of like the face care stuff and all of like supplements and everything, and it's like, oh my god, like what am I going to do? And I think sometimes it like, as you were speaking, it made me think of like the pressures I feel sometimes to buy into a certain like product. Or I think I saw something today about like healthy hot chocolate, which was basically like a collagen hot chocolate drink, and I'm like, oh my, I just click past them as fast as I can because I'm like, this is just a load of nonsense. But that, I think, is all part of it. And I think I'm kind of like you, like I love skincare and I love doing it right. But I think when there's so much information out there and we don't really know what right is, it can make it really difficult to choose. And I think as well, because there is this like this need, if you like, for women to be like youthful, that it can put, I think there are a lot of women feeling a lot of pressure to like look certain ways, whether that is in terms of what their face looks like or in terms of how skinny they are. There's so much pressure now, which is really, really hard to get away from.
And a lot of that is structured within the hierarchies we live in. So like think about, we've talked about thinness before being a trend when more conservative authoritarian kind of powers starts happening, and that all of a sudden it's a pressure to be thin, it's a pressure to look a certain way, and that's totally different than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago it was all about body positivity, right? We want people who are looking differently. We want people who are different vibes and a bit chaotic. And I think it almost relates to what Jess was saying about like people kind of associate that with the cringe millennial now, is us just like not giving a fuck. You know what I mean? And now there's this big backlash. And also I think COVID was a big issue because that drove a lot of this, that people spent spent much more time online. The algorithm learned a lot. The world was chaotic. And when the world starts to become or feel to a person quite chaotic, order and hierarchy becomes really addictive because it just calms down your emotional and psychological response. Now, what people don't often question is, okay, what is the order and hierarchy? Whose order are we being asked to follow in these moments? There's some more stuff we should probably dig into.
Oh my goodness, I could speak about like the beauty stuff and the
Well,
like
we're going to
in
do
this
a
stuff
full
forever
episode
because
on this. Guys, we're going to
yeah.
have somebody awesome on for that who we both love. So keep an eye out for that because that's an expert in the beauty field. So we're not going to say who or when yet, but keep your eye out. For now, we're going to talk about language that sounds like liberation.
Woohoo! Like, go back to beauty, go back.
Yeah. Let's go back to skincare. So, like I said, language is super important. If you guys haven't watched the TED Talk about the importance of language and how it shapes our brain, it's amazing. But right now we have examples of language like high value woman, divine feminine, boss babe, self regulation, which is an annoying therapy term that has been co opted.
Really?
Yeah. Embody your femininity, things like that. And like I said, we're in the red pill era, right? And so this red pill version of femininity reframes compliance as confidence. So being agreeable, being attractive and thin and obedient is sold as like a high status woman thing. The amount of time I've been called a low value woman online, I'm like, why do you think I give a shit about your value of me? Of course you don't value me.
I
I
also
stand
just
for
think that's incorrect, but yeah. Oh my goodness.
I'm like, I have very high standards, and I think that's why you think I'm a low value woman.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. This is actually a compliment.
Yeah, thank you so much. This empowerment gets reframed as, or empowerment in heavy quotes, right? And it gets reframed as discipline. So this kind of what we talked about, like you're not oppressed, you're just undisciplined. This is what Jordan Peterson uses a lot, Andrew Tate uses a lot, but it's much more quiet in the soft girl era content. Like you just have to take space with your softness. It's just that you're not living in your feminine energy. And these messages offer a lot of clarity in really certain times. So that's that epistemic closure that we were talking about.
What does that mean? Sorry. What does epistemic closure mean?
It's language, it's moralizing through language. It relieves that uncertainty that you feel through language that makes you feel better.
Okay, yes, yeah.
Yeah. And then again, we are correcting ourselves. We are shrinking ourselves into compliance. And the thing that I'll say to people in these moments is, look, what does the empowerment look like? Right? Because empowerment without disruption of the system that you're in is just obedience, but it just looks a bit different. It looks like a boss babe. It looks like a soft girl era. So I think the thing to think of, like, if your solution to anxiety is to be more beautiful or more obedient or more in control, which we probably struggle with, like a solution to anxiety oftentimes is perceived control, right? Psychologically. But we have to think, whose needs are being met here? Is it meeting my needs? Is it meeting the needs of, a system that we're in?
I was just thinking a lot about, I was like thinking about the control part, which I just think is interesting because, like you said, like as psychologists and potentially especially as sports psychologists, we're often working with clients who that's what they want. They want control
And need.
out of everything. That's why,
Yeah.
the term, like, control the controllables has
Mm-hmm.
so like widely stated, because we're always working to support people to, I suppose, accept what they can't control. And this sort of movement, if you want to term it that, is kind of saying, well, no, don't worry, like we can control everything, like come over here. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really comforting for people, because it's really, really difficult to accept the things that we can't control. I find that really difficult. I am a bit of a control freak. So it's like interesting, I think, in that sense, when we think about control and think about our like desire as human beings to, get away from that like uncertainty and the anxiety and be certain about something. But perhaps that's just short lived.
I think it's really funny when people call themselves control freaks in the era that we live in, because our
Okay.
brains are not evolved to have to control so many things. Our brains are not evolved for the shit show that we live in. And there are so many, many, many factors out of our control that would not normally be, for the environment we were evolved for. So, of course, a lack of control means that we have anxiety, and we're going to think, okay, well, if I can control something, that'll heal my anxiety. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's
Yeah.
such a normal human response. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, what can sometimes be adaptive is used to control us in certain situations. So it's giving us a palatable thing to hold on to. Buy this product, you'll feel like you fit more in this role. Become part of this
Okay.
membership online, subscribe to this, blah, blah, blah. It's offering control that doesn't exist. And so I think what we do when we're talking to clients and we say control the controllables, we're talking about real things like, do you have your kit? Have you talked to your coach? Have you done the XYZ? Whereas what these people or ideas are offering is a fake sense of control,
Yeah.
because they're not actually gaining control over any tangible thing in their life. They're gaining control over a performance. So I think that's what the difference is from like a psychological point of view.
I was thinking about how we spoke about, was it like off one of our first episodes, about that like performative identity? And
Mm-hmm.
it's again this like reflection on, okay, is this behavior or identity I'm performing, is that useful to me or not? Like, who is it serving?
Hmm.
Does it work for me, or does it not? And I guess the really tricky bit within that is if we are somewhat being manipulated into, buying certain things or whatever it might be, then we're going to feel like, yes, that does serve me. And I think that's where it starts to get really sticky, is it's really difficult to have that critical thought around it sometimes when it is being sold as something that is benefiting you and helping you. So it's really messy, I think.
It's messy, especially because people saw it coming because they are the ones who designed it. But the layperson, or like the people who don't know stuff about algorithms, didn't invent them, don't know how to react to it because we've had no education on it. Do you know what I mean? We've had no, like, for example, I think it's Norway at the very least. I think it's Norway. They're educating children on algorithms. I just felt something by my foot and I'm scared there's another spider.
Ah!
It's fine. I don't think it was. It was a paper. It was a sticky note, guys. For context, when I walked into my office this morning, there was a spider the size of like a biscuit or a cookie. It was horrible. Yeah, it was horrific. Anyway, where was I? What was I saying? Oh yeah, we don't have any education on it. I think, like I
Norway.
said, Denmark, one of those countries, sorry guys, is already educating their children on what to look out for on social media. That's propaganda and stuff like that. But we don't have any of that because our countries are much more capitalized than those countries. America has an inherent fear of its own citizens. We've had no education on what to look out for. Also because it's happened so quickly. So of course it's going to work on people. It's almost like people calling up your grandpa with using AI technology to sound like my brother, saying that he was in a car accident and he needed money. Now, most of us wouldn't fall for it, but the technology is kind of beyond that generation at this point. So it's just so hard because we don't even know where this technology is going to go. So I think give yourself a bit of a break if it works on you, but it's just about learning how to be aware, because adding that critical thought to it is what will just kind of help separate it from the seeing it to the reaction. You just want to add a space in between. I want to talk about why this works specifically so well on women, especially white, middle class, cis, able-bodied women, because like I said, there is safety in hierarchy if you are a privileged member of that hierarchy. And white femininity has always been rewarded when compliant. I've done a few videos on this where I talk about like white feminism. When it started, one of the reasons they kind of mobilized, not all of them, right? But one of the reasons the white feminists started to mobilize was because they thought it was crazy that a Black person would be able to vote before them. So we have to be very aware that feminism and femininity are not always the good guys, in heavy quotes, right? So a lot of us have this internalized belief where if I play by the rules, I'll be safe, I'll be loved, I'll be spared. So I'll be spared hostile sexism or even worse, right? And over the years, we've seen this feminine performance as a protection. So softness, thinness, palatability, it's all a survival strategy. We saw that, in the backlash after World War II with the kind of 50s housewife, things like that. And we see it in more marginalized groups who, even unknowing over time, have had to knowingly and unknowingly. I'm not saying not everyone knew. I'm just saying like some people just don't have had to or have chosen to even take on more kind of Western white vibe, like straightening your hair, putting on certain kinds of makeup, trying to lose weight if it's not your natural body type, right?
Have you ever seen The Millionaire Matchmaker?
No, I don't
My
think so.
goodness. It is like it's fantastic and horrific at the same time. It's like one of those like early like noughties, like American TV shows. And this woman, I think she's called Patty or something. And she like matches millionaires to partners, and they do like, you know, like mixes and stuff. Anyway, the potential partners, let's say it's someone's looking for like a woman as a partner, then Patty would literally be like, you know, your hair is awful, it needs to be straight, there's no worth in you, like, unless your hair is straight, and like all of
Jesus
these
Christ.
things, and like tells them how they should be, but it's very much based around this, like, I don't know what you want to term it, like feminine ideal or whatever. And it's kind of all of those things that you were just saying that she was putting on to people or suggesting people had to do if they wanted to be successful in a relationship. And it's a really interesting program to watch. I think you can watch it on ITV if you're in the UK. And it's like one of those shows which is funny, but in a really terrible way once you understand the context and like the social systems surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I was also thinking about as you were talking then was I think when we've been talking around this topic, I've been just thinking about like social media, I think, and almost like forgetting that it is just all of society. Like we are
Mm-hmm.
constantly being fed all of this. And I think that I feel a lot of those things you were mentioning, like around, you know, needing to be palatable and obedient and sticking to the rules and all of these things. Like I feel so much of that, even though I'm not really on like social media that much. So
Well,
yeah.
that's it's always going to filter down because
Yeah.
the algorithm, it's making stuff happen faster and more noticeably, but it's just reflecting the world we live in, you know? So of course it's going to filter through the media you consume, the ads you see on TV, the way people treat you. You know, you can always tell. And I just want to go back to what you said about the show real quick.
Yeah.
About, I just feel like that's the old school version of what's happening now. I mean, the early 2000s were basically like now. They were like, the vibe was you needed to be thin, women need to kind of shrink a bit, and that was a backlash to the wave of feminism that had just happened. But the way that this woman, right, the matchmaker was a woman, told people, women, not everyone, that they needed to be successful in a relationship was to do these things. And they were all, I'm assuming all the things they had to do were as visual aesthetic kind of stuff.
It was also, I suppose, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are some things in terms of like how they were communicating, or, you know, some of them aren't like the worst
You're being
tips.
too
It's
loud,
like,
you're being too
oh,
aggressive, you're
sorry.
not.
Oh, I thought you were talking to me. I was like, oh my God, am I being really loud? I was like, am I shouting into the microphone? But yeah, things like that, or things like, you know, you need to like, some things might seem more positive, so they might say something like you need to lead with your personality rather than your body, you know. So some of those things aren't like
No, that drives me nuts
do you
because
think that's bad?
that's
Okay.
yes, it is, because it's like to the women who maybe have a bit more of like a confident walk. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And
Yeah.
so like lead with, like, that's a bit much. Maybe lead with your
Okay.
personality first. All of this just looks at, like, reflects to me women being told to be objects. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So like,
Yeah.
so you need to look and act a certain way to be successful in a relationship. Essentially, no man is going to want you if you're a person. So, not ideal.
Yeah, it's an interesting program. It's a good case study. I would, yeah, watch it and take notes and let us know what you think.
I have enough rage, Laura. I don't know if that's a good idea.
Okay. That's fair.
I might try. I might try. But like I said, you know, systems like white patriarchy, well, that's what it is. White supremacy and patriarchy are hierarchical. And the reason this works so well on white women is because, especially if you're a white woman who is kind of fits that norm of what a white man might find attractive, you're like just this close to power, right? Just this close enough to the top to believe that, you know, you have some power or that it's worth it. For example, you probably haven't heard of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I envy you for it. She is a GOP, so she's a MAGA. She's a congressperson in the U.S., and she has been voting and acting against her own best interests for years and years and years. She's literally horrible. All of a sudden, now that it affects her personally because she's experienced some very overt sexism, she's like, MAGA doesn't respect women. Okay, well, it hasn't for the last 10 years, but now because it because you thought you were this close to power. You thought it was worth it for other women to suffer because you were climbing the ranks. But now that it impacts you personally, you're going to call it out? Sorry, no. So you feel close enough to kind of shape that power. So you submit. And so that's kind of like what the aesthetics do and why it's so easy to target certain types of women with this kind of stuff. It's because you want to be part of that in group. You want to be part of that, as well as a lot of this stuff is targeted as at the world being crazy. That's true. But as well as the control you get, it's that layer of where am I in the hierarchy, the power hierarchy, and how close do I feel to the top? And it's protective to be closer to the top. And it's almost like a way nobody knows like that this is happening in their brains. It's all very subconscious, right? It's not like I must wear this to be closer to the top of the hierarchy. It's all very subconscious. I feel like I just went on for a bit. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No.
But essentially, whiteness is the invisible standard in heavy quotes because it's visible to a lot of people in this trad wife, girl boss, clean girl space. It's never kind of named, but it's always there. It's always like implied. And the acceptable soft life excludes disabled, neurodivergent, queer bodies that aren't white. It's basically purity politics repackaged as wellness. And there's a lot of class privilege, like I was talking about. I mean, we could see it in the video that I sent you. So it enables this life to appear effortless. The trad wife who doesn't show the nanny, the girl boss who has generational wealth. I mean, there's this creator called Ballerina Farm who you've never probably heard of. And she was a Juilliard ballerina who quit because her partner asked her to, had a bunch of kids. They're from generational wealth. And she does all this like aspirational and heavy quotes trad wife content, but they live on a farm with nannies and help and stuff like that. And then it just makes people feel worse and worse. And she's obviously like a very thin, privileged white woman who can demonstrate this, right? And the aesthetics aren't just about obedience, they're about money, whiteness, able-bodiedness, and thinness. And these scripts disproportionately appeal to these people, right? So especially because these people are taught that complicity means safety.
And it is like very white and privileged and so on. But then every now and then they throw in a video of like a really dirty room or like their really dirty oven and like trying to like normalize or highlight that it's not perfect all the time. And though I kind of like that because it obviously like makes me feel better about like my disgusting kitchen or whatever, I'm also like, is that in a sense a way to draw you in more? Like, do you know what I'm trying to get at? I haven't really fully formed the thought, but I noticed a lot of that when I don't know, like, people are trying to get away from this perfect aesthetic and then throw in, oh, I've had one bad day and like that's gonna like change things.
Because they know that there's going to be a level of like, I don't know what the correct word is off the top of my head, but like a negative emotional reaction to seeing somebody with a perfect life all the time. It can be aspirational, right? But every once in a while they need to throw in like, this is my everyday. It's not always perfect. You know what I mean? Because our societies have this, especially in America, this idea that even if you're like poor or middle class, you're only one good decision from being a millionaire. We're all just waiting to be millionaires. And so aspirational content is primed for us because we're like, we could have this if only we tried hard enough. But then obviously throwing in a bit of relatability keeps you there a little bit because you're saying like, oh, okay, so she had to clean her stove and I have to clean my stove. So I'm closer than I think I am. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's totally it. Yeah.
And I think that's where we kind of think of self-shame and other shame. So being shame from whether you're like enforcing the shame internally or feeling it from external sources. This is how people get stuck in this. Shame is a huge thing. If you guys don't listen to Brene Brown, I'm sure anyone who listens to us probably already has listened to all of Brene Brown's stuff. But shame is a super powerful psychological mechanism and social mechanism. Once you're inside this system, it keeps you invested through shame, perceived status, and internalized discipline. And you're told that the only thing that's stopping you from being like safe or desirable is you, right? So you're not burnt out. You're just being lazy. You're not lonely. You're not feminine enough, right? Just how the red pill ideology does, like, oh, it's a male loneliness epidemic. It's not just that we are treating women poorly. It can be like, you're not healing. You're just failing to manifest. God, just start manifesting, right? Then you'll heal. Don't go to a doctor. And this is what promotes that loyalty. And it's not to promote healing or any kind of better life. It's just to promote identity groups, which benefits the system. Have you ever blamed yourself for not feeling better, even when you think you're doing everything in heavy quotes right?
Yeah, like all the time.
Would you care to share?
I guess one example. So last week I had a cold, and I was like in the depths. No, maybe like day 2 of the cold when you actually feel kind of bad. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna feel fine tomorrow. I was like, I've had loads of vitamins. I've like eaten healthily. I've rested. Tomorrow I'll be fine. And tomorrow I was not fine. I felt worse. And I was like, oh, but I've done everything I was meant to do. Why do I still feel like this?
Yeah, I feel that. It's like, I think we also talked about this in our over optimization episode. It's like, you're ticking all the wellness boxes. Why isn't it translating to my well-being? And I think that's something that is really difficult to do in the societies that we live in. And that's how these systems, like the algorithm and the alt-right pipeline for men and women, they get you, and it's how they keep you. And I think that really mirrors neoliberalism and capitalism. Exhaustion becomes just this badge of honor, where beauty, being productive, sometimes even being obedient, just becomes kind of like a self-love thing. And it's all branding. It's not empowerment, that's branding yourself within something. So I think that it doesn't feel like you're being radicalized. It feels like order when the world feels out of control, but it just really relies on your complicity. And it's just addictive because there is that need to feel safe, seen, and in control. But equally, that safety isn't neutral because it's built on performance, it's built on obedience, and it's also built on exclusion, even if you're not aware of that. And so, what happens when you start to see through it? That's the question. Because inevitably, even if you're being shamed almost into staying in these systems, the mask is going to start to slip at some point, one way or another. And so I think that's what we want to cover next time.
So I suppose as a reflection to end on, I think for me what's been interesting is seeing how some of this like obedience and rule setting might show up in my life. And I think I'll often put the blame on those things, like on myself, like, oh, it's because I'm just that type of person, or I need to have, like you say, I'm a control freak. But actually, where is that from? Like, maybe it is from some of these systems that we're living in. So maybe if you guys kind of reflect on, is there anything in this that kind of resonated with you? Like, do you notice any of this obedience in yourself? And it's not that obedience is always something that's bad, but can we bring a little bit of awareness to it and start to put that critical lens on, I suppose, our behaviors and, like I say, the rules we set or why we do what we do.
Love that as a reflection. And with that in mind, next week we will be looking at that a little bit more. We're going to dig into the cost of this pipeline. We're going to dig into the shame a little bit more, and maybe the grief and the backlash of when you're in those systems for too long, and the really complicated work of kind of walking away from that if you choose to. So with that, thank you guys so much for listening. As always, we probably left you with more questions than answers, but that's kind of the point. We love digging into the messy undercurrents of wellness, language, and discipline disguised as empowerment, and how the alt-right pipeline for women maintains our presence there. If you have any thoughts, questions, rage, we want to hear it. Drop us a comment, message us, or shout into the void, but tagging us is much more effective and helpful. If there's a topic that you'd like us to dig into next, get in touch. We're always up for a new rabbit hole. And if you liked the episode, don't forget to like, follow, rate, scream about it from the rooftop, whatever your platform allows, and tell your friends. You can find all of our links on the But Why Instagram page. Head to the bio for everything. And remember, the first step to understanding is asking, but why?